I trusted my boss like a father and was about to propose to the woman of my dreams. Then I walked into his office and discovered they'd been planning something behind my back for months. What happened next destroyed everything I believed about loyalty and family, but it also revealed a shocking secret about my own past that changed my life forever. This is how I turned the tables on the people who tried to destroy me. My name is Brandy Briggs. I'm 39 years old now, but this story starts when I was 29, working as a forensic accountant in downtown Phoenix. Back then, I thought I had it all figured out. Good job, beautiful woman who'd agreed to marry me, and a mentor who treated me like the son he never had. Turns out 2 of those 3 things were built on lies. I should probably start with Cordelia. Cordelia Marsh. Even now, 10 years later, her name still sits heavy in my mouth. We met at a coffee shop near the courthouse where I just finished testifying in a fraud case. She was there with a book, some legal thriller, and when she saw me approaching, she smiled and said, "Let me guess, you're either a detective or an accountant." "Forensic accountant," I told her, and she laughed. Close enough. We talked for 2 hours that day. She was smart, funny, and had this way of making you feel like you were the most interesting person in the room. Cordelia worked in marketing for a mid-sized firm, had her own apartment, drove a reliable Honda, and seemed to have her life together. When I asked her out, she said yes without playing games. For 3 years, we built something I thought was real. We'd spend weekends hiking in Sedona, cooking elaborate meals neither of us could really afford, and talking about the future like it was this bright, certain thing waiting for us. She'd come to my office sometimes, bringing lunch or just stopping by to say hello. Everyone liked her, my colleagues, my boss Quentin Hale, even the security guard. Quentin Hale was the kind of man who commanded respect without demanding it. He'd built his forensic accounting firm from nothing, working out of a strip mall office until he had enough clients to afford something decent downtown. By the time I joined him, Hale and Associates was handling some of the biggest fraud cases in Arizona. He took me under his wing from day one, not just professionally, but personally too. Quentin would stay late to explain complex case strategies, invite me to client dinners, and sometimes we just talk about life. He'd been married for 25 years, had 2 kids in college. I respected him more than my own father, if I'm being honest. When I decided to propose to Cordelia, Quentin was the first person I told. I was nervous, excited, and needed advice from someone who'd made marriage work. "Son, you're making the right choice," Quentin said, clapping me on the shoulder. "That woman's got character." Then he offered to help me plan something special, maybe even lend me his cabin up in Flagstaff for a romantic weekend. I should have known something was wrong when Cordelia started asking questions about Quentin's cases, his clients, his schedule. Looking back, I realized Cordelia had been studying Quentin's operation like a textbook. She'd ask innocent questions during dinner. How does Quentin decide which cases to take? Or, do you handle the financial records for his biggest clients? I thought she was just being supportive, showing interest in my career. What an idiot I was. The first real warning sign came 3 months before everything fell apart. I was working late on an insurance fraud case involving a construction company that had claimed massive equipment theft. The numbers weren't adding up, and I needed to cross-reference some banking records with the timeline Quentin had established. I walked into his office to grab the client files from his safe, something I'd done dozens of times before. But this time, Quentin jumped up from his desk like I caught him doing something wrong. "Brandy, I didn't hear you come in," he said, quickly closing his laptop. "What do you need, son?" "Just the Morrison construction files," I replied. "Want to double-check those bank transfers against the police report." Quentin's smile seemed forced. "Actually, I'll handle that part of the case myself. You focus on the forensic analysis. We don't want to overwhelm you with too much paperwork." That was weird. Quentin had never treated me like I couldn't handle complex financial documents. In fact, he'd been grooming me to take on more responsibility, not less. But I shrugged it off, figured he was just being protective of a high-value client. The second warning sign was Cordelia's sudden interest in my work schedule. She started asking specific questions about when I'd be working late, which nights Quentin would be in the office, when our big client meetings were scheduled. Again, I thought she was just trying to plan our time together better. "I want to make sure I'm not interrupting important work," she'd say, running her fingers through my hair. "Your career matters to me, Brandy. I want to support you however I can." How's that for irony? She was supporting me, all right, straight into a trap. The third sign was money. Cordelia had always been careful with finances, splitting restaurant bills, and keeping track of shared expenses. But suddenly she had new clothes, expensive jewelry, and suggested we upgrade to pricier restaurants. When I asked about it, she said she'd landed some freelance marketing contracts. Business is good, she'd tell me with that beautiful smile. I'm finally getting the recognition I deserve. I was proud of her success. Hell, I was planning to propose and figured her financial stability would make our future more secure. I even started shopping for engagement rings, thinking about how I could surprise her with something worthy of the woman I thought she was. But the biggest red flag, the one I completely missed, was how she started showing up at the office more frequently. She'd bring coffee for the whole team, chat with our receptionist, and always made sure to stop by Quentin's office to say hello. Just being friendly, she'd explain when I asked why she spent so much time talking to my boss. Quentin's important to your career. I want him to know what kind of woman you're with. Yeah, he found out exactly what kind of woman she was. And so did I. The ring cost me 3 months' salary. A 2-carat diamond solitaire that caught the light like captured fire. I've been saving for 8 months, skipping lunches and working overtime to afford something that would match what I thought Cordelia deserved. The jeweler wrapped it in a midnight blue box that felt heavier than it should have. I had the whole proposal planned out. Quentin's cabin in Flagstaff, a weekend getaway, disguised as a simple retreat. I told Cordelia we needed some time away from the city, away from work stress. She'd smiled and agreed, saying she could use a break from her demanding clients. The Friday before a planned trip, I was finishing up the Morrison construction case when Quentin called me into his office. He was standing by the window, looking out at the Phoenix skyline with his hands clasped behind his back. "Brandy, I want to talk to you about something important," he said without turning around. "Sure, what's on your mind?" I settled into the chair across from his desk. He turned around, and there was something different in his expression, more serious than usual. "I've been thinking about your future here at the firm. You've shown real talent, real dedication." "Thank you, sir. That means a lot coming from you." Quentin walked over and sat on the edge of his desk. "I want to offer you a partnership track. Junior partner within 2 years, full partner within 5. It would mean more responsibility, bigger cases, and of course, significantly better compensation." My heart started racing. Partnership at Hale & Associates was what I've been working towards since day one. "That's incredible, Quentin. I don't know what to say." "Say yes," he smiled. "But there's one thing. I need to know you're committed to this firm long term. No jumping ship to start your own practice or joining a competitor." "Of course not. This is where I want to build my career." Quentin nodded slowly. "Good. Because I've got some sensitive cases coming up that will require absolute trust and discretion. $1 million insurance fraud, federal contract disputes, the kind of work that can make or break careers." I stood up and shook his hand. "You won't regret this decision." "I know I won't," he said, but something in his tone felt off. "By the way, how are things going with Cordelia? Still planning to pop the question?" "Actually, this weekend. I was going to use your cabin, if the offer still stands." Quentin's smile seemed forced. "Of course. You kids have a wonderful time. She's lucky to have a man like you." Walking out his office that day, I felt like I was on top of the world. Partnership track, the perfect woman, a future that looked brighter than I'd ever imagined. I called Cordelia immediately. "Babe, you won't believe what just happened," I said when she picked up. "Tell me everything," she replied, and I could hear the excitement in her voice. If only I'd known she already knew exactly what had happened. If only I'd realized that my mentor and my fiancé had been planning my downfall while I was planning my future. The cabin was perfect. Rustic pine walls, stone fireplace, and a view of the mountains that took your breath away. I'd spent the drive up rehearsing my proposal speech while Cordelia dozed in the passenger seat. Everything felt right, like the universe was aligning to give me this perfect moment. We spent Saturday hiking, cooking together, and talking about our future. Cordelia seemed different somehow, more distant, checking her phone more often than usual. When I asked about it, she said she was expecting an important call about a potential client. "Work never stops, right?" she said with a laugh that didn't quite reach her eyes. That evening, I built a fire and opened a bottle of wine. The ring was hidden in my jacket pocket, waiting for the right moment. I was about to get down on one knee when Cordelia's phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it and suddenly stood up. "I need to make a quick call. Work emergency. Can it wait until Monday?" I asked. Unfortunately, no. This client is overseas, different time zones. Give me 10 minutes. She stepped outside onto the deck, closing the door behind her. Through the window, I could see her pacing back and forth, having what looked like an intense conversation. Her body language was animated, almost excited. Strange for a work emergency. When she came back inside 20 minutes later, she seemed flustered. Everything okay? I asked. Just client drama. You know how it is. She poured herself another glass of wine. So, what were we talking about? I reached for the ring box, but something fell off. The moment I planned so carefully seemed wrong now. Instead, I suggested we call it an early night. Sunday morning, Cordelia said she wasn't feeling well and wanted to head back to Phoenix. The drive home was quiet, both of us lost in our own thoughts. When we got to her apartment, she kissed me goodbye quickly and said she needed a rest. I'll call you tomorrow, she said, already heading for her door. Monday came and went without a call. Tuesday, she sent a brief text saying she was swamped with work. By Wednesday, I was worried enough to stop by her office unannounced. Her supervisor, Janet, looked confused when I asked for Cordelia. She called in sick today, Janet said. Actually, she's been taking a lot of sick days lately. Is everything all right? That's when the pieces started falling into place. The mysterious phone calls, the new clothes, the sudden wealth, the frequent absences from work. Micah told me something was seriously wrong. Thursday evening, I decided to surprise her with takeout from her favorite Thai restaurant. Her car wasn't in her apartment complex parking lot, but I went upstairs anyway. Her neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, was watering plants in the hallway. Oh, hello, Brandy, she said with a warm smile. Looking for Cordelia? She left about an hour ago, all dressed up. Had flowers with her too. Flowers. Cordelia had never mentioned having dinner plans, and she certainly hadn't mentioned receiving flowers from anyone. My hand started shaking as I walked back to my car. I had a choice to make. Trust the woman I loved, or follow my instincts that something was very, very wrong. I followed my instincts. Thursday night, instead of going home, I parked across the street from Cordelia's apartment complex and waited. Around 7:30, she emerged wearing the black dress I'd bought her for her birthday last year. She looked beautiful, but she also looked like she was going somewhere important. Her Honda pulled out of the parking lot, and I followed at a distance. She drove across town to the Phoenician Resort, one of the most expensive hotels in Scottsdale. I watched her walk into the lobby like she owned the place, confidence radiating from every step. I waited 5 minutes before going inside. The lobby was elegant, all marble and crystal chandeliers. I spotted Cordelia at the bar, but she wasn't alone. She was sitting across from Quentin Hale, my mentor, my boss, the man I trusted more than my own father. They weren't having a business meeting. Their body language, the way she touched his hand, the intimate way they leaned toward each other. This was a couple who'd been together for a while. I ducked behind a pillar, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might explode. Everything made sense now. The expensive clothes, the mysterious phone calls, her sudden interest in Quentin's business, the frequent visits to our office. She hadn't been gathering information for idle curiosity. She'd been reporting back to him. But reporting what? And why? I watched them for another hour, taking photos with my phone. They held hands across the table, shared dessert, and when they thought no one was looking, Quentin kissed her. Not a friendly peck, but a deep, passionate kiss that told me everything I needed to know about their relationship. When they got up to leave, I followed them to the elevator. They went up to the 8th floor. I waited 10 minutes, then took the stairs. Their voices carried down the hallway. Cordelia's laugh, Quentin's deeper tones. They were in room 847. I stood outside that door for what felt like hours, listening to the sounds that confirmed my worst fears. The woman I'd planned to propose to was sleeping with my boss, the man who'd offered me a partnership just days ago. Walking back to my car, I felt like I was moving through a nightmare. Everything I thought I knew about my life was a lie. But as the shock wore off, anger took its place. Cold, calculating anger. They thought they were playing me, but I was about to turn the tables. Friday morning, I called in sick and spent the day at the Phoenix Public Library, using their computers to research everything I could find about adultery laws, partnership agreements, and employment contracts. If Quentin thought he could betray me and still keep me as his employee, he was dead wrong. I also called my buddy Dale Kruger, a former Army sergeant who now worked private security. Dale and I had served together in the National Guard, and he was the kind of guy you wanted in your corner when things got rough. "I need a favor, Dale," I said when he picked up. "Someone's been playing games with my life, and I need evidence." "What kind of evidence?" Dale's voice was steady, professional, the kind that holds up in court. Dale met me at a diner near Sky Harbor Airport Saturday morning. He looked the same as always, military haircut, pressed shirt, and eyes that missed nothing. We'd been through enough together that I didn't need to explain why this mattered. "So your boss is sleeping with your fiancée," Dale said after I'd laid out the situation. "And you think there's more to it than just an affair?" "Has to be. The timing's too convenient. He offers me partnership right before I discover this. No way that's coincidence." Dale nodded slowly. "What do you need from me?" "Surveillance. Professional documentation. I want to know everything. Where they go, what they do, how long this has been happening. That's going to cost you. I've got money saved for an engagement ring. Might as well put it to better use." Dale pulled out a small notebook. "Give me their addresses, car descriptions, usual schedules. I'll track them for a week, get you photos, timestamps, the whole package." While Dale gathered intelligence, I did my own investigation at the office. I started paying attention to Quentin's behavior in ways I never had before. The closed-door meetings, the hush phone calls, the way he'd quickly minimize his computer screen when I walked into his office. I also started documenting everything. Every case file I worked on, every client interaction, every piece of evidence that proved my value to the firm. If Quentin was planning to screw me over professionally, I wanted a paper trail showing my contributions. Wednesday afternoon, Dale called with his preliminary report. "Your boy's got expensive taste," he said. "Hotel suites, 5-star restaurants, shopping trips to Nordstrom. Either he's got money to burn, or he's trying really hard to impress her." "What about their routine?" "Tuesdays and Thursdays at the Phoenician. Sometimes Sunday afternoons at his house when his wife's visiting her sister. Your girl's been staying over at his place more often than her own apartment lately." The information hit me like a physical blow. Cordelia had been lying to me for months, maybe longer. All those nights, she said she was working late or visiting friends. She'd been with Quentin. "There's something else," Dale continued. "I followed him to a law office yesterday. Spent 2 hours inside. Came out looking stressed. Might want to look into what kind of legal troubles your boss is having." That weekend, I made my decision. I couldn't keep pretending everything was normal. Couldn't keep working for a man who was betraying me on every level. But I also couldn't just walk away without understanding the full scope of what they were doing. Monday morning, I walked into Quentin's office with a resignation letter in my pocket and a recording device in my shirt. If he wanted to destroy my life, he was going to have to admit it out loud. "Quentin, we need to talk," I said, closing the door behind me. He looked up from his computer with that familiar smile, the one I'd trusted for 3 years. "Of course, son. What's on your mind?" "I know about you and Cordelia." The smile disappeared immediately, replaced by something cold and calculating. "I think you're mistaken, Brandy." "Am I?" "Because I've got photos that say otherwise." For a long moment, we stared at each other across his desk. Then Quentin leaned back in his chair and laughed. "Well, I guess it's time we had an honest conversation." Quentin's laugh was cold, nothing like the warm chuckle I'd heard countless times over the years. He stood up from his desk and walked to the window, hands clasped behind his back in that familiar pose. "You want an honest conversation, Brandy? Fine. Let's have one." The recording device in my shirt was capturing every word. Dale had taught me to always get confessions on tape. They were harder to deny later. "How long?" I asked. "How long what?" "How long have I been sleeping with your fiancée?" "About 8 months." "How long have I been planning to destroy your career?" "Since the day you started getting too close to my financial arrangements." My blood ran cold. "What financial arrangements?" Quentin turned around, and I saw a man I'd never met before. The mentor, the father figure, the respected businessman. All of it was gone, replaced by someone calculating and ruthless. "I've been borrowing from client settlement accounts, Brandy, just temporarily, to cover some personal expenses. The divorce, alimony payments, keeping up appearances. I always planned to pay it back." "Borrowing? You mean stealing." Such an ugly word. I prefer temporary reallocation of funds. "But then you started asking questions about the Morrison case, wanting access to files that would show the discrepancies. I needed a distraction. The pieces fell into place like a nightmare puzzle. So you seduced Cordelia. Actually, she approached me first. Turns out your sweet little fiancé has quite an appetite for the finer things in life. When I mentioned that her boyfriend was getting dangerously close to information that could destroy both our careers, she was very motivated to help. I thought about my mother back in Tucson, struggling with her medical bills after a stroke. I've been sending her half my paycheck every month, money I'd earned through honest work at this firm, money that Quentin had been planning to steal from me all along. The partnership offer was fake? Oh no, that was real. I figured if I made you a partner, you'd be complicit in the firm's financial irregularities. Much harder to whistleblow when you're part of the problem. And if I discovered the theft anyway? Quentin smiled that cold smile again. Then Cordelia would testify that you'd been acting strangely, talking about wanting to get rich quick, having access to all the same files and accounts. Who do you think people would believe? The respected firm owner or the junior associate with gambling debts? I don't have gambling debts. You would have, posthumously. Amazing what you can find on a man's computer after he tragically takes his own life. Overwhelmed by guilt over embezzling from client accounts. The threat was clear. Quentin wasn't just planning to frame me. He was planning to kill me and make it look like suicide. I thought about Dale waiting in the parking lot, armed and ready for anything. There's just one problem with your plan, Quentin. What's that, son? I'm not as stupid as you think I am. I pulled out my phone and showed Quentin the recording app. This entire conversation has been broadcast live to 3 different people, including an FBI agent specializing in financial crimes. His face went white. You're bluffing. Am I? Agent Rodriguez has been investigating reports of client fund mismanagement at forensic accounting firms across Arizona. She was very interested when I contacted her yesterday. The door opened behind me, and Dale stepped in, followed by 2 FBI agents in suits. Quentin's eyes darted toward his desk drawer, but Dale was faster, positioning himself between Quentin and whatever he was reaching for. Mr. Hale, I'm Agent Rodriguez, the lead FBI agent said, showing her badge. We have a warrant to search these premises and arrest you on charges of embezzlement and conspiracy to commit fraud. This is insane, Quentin protested as they cuffed him. Brandy's lying. He's the one who's been stealing from clients. Check his bank accounts. We already did, Agent Rodriguez replied. Funny thing about digital forensics, they leave quite a trail. We found transfers from client accounts to offshore holdings registered under shell companies linked to your social security number. As they led Quentin away, he looked back at me with pure hatred. You have no idea what you've done, boy. Cordelia will destroy you. She has information that could ruin your family. What information? I called after him, but he was already gone. Dale put a hand on my shoulder. Easy, brother. Whatever he's talking about, we'll handle it. Agent Rodriguez stayed behind to explain the next steps. Mr. Briggs, you'll need to testify in federal court about what you observe and recorded. The charges against Mr. Hale are serious. We're looking at 15 to 20 years. What about Cordelia? Ms. Marsh will be arrested as an accessory. We have evidence of her involvement in moving stolen funds through fake marketing contracts. That afternoon, I drove to Cordelia's apartment for the last time. She answered the door in a bathrobe, her hair messy, clearly just woken up. Brandy, what are you doing here? I thought you were working. Quentin's been arrested. FBI raided the office this morning. Her face went through a series of expressions: surprise, fear, anger, and finally resignation. How much do they know? Everything. The embezzlement, your involvement, the plan to frame me. It's over, Cordelia. She stepped aside to let me in, but I stayed in the doorway. I just came to get my things and to tell you that whatever Quentin thinks you have on my family, it won't work. My mother's medical bills are legitimate, and I've got documentation for every payment. Cordelia laughed bitterly. Your mother's bills? Brandy, you still don't get it, do you? The information I have isn't about money. Then what? Your father didn't die in a car accident when you were 10. He's alive, Brandy. He's been in federal prison for tax evasion for the past 15 years. Your mother's been lying to you your whole life. The words hit me like a physical blow. Everything I thought I knew about my family, my childhood, my father's death, all of it was a lie. You're lying. Cordelia pulled out a manila folder from her purse. Prison records, court documents, visitor logs. Your mother visits him twice a year. She never told you because she was ashamed. I stared at the documents, my hands shaking. Even in her betrayal, Cordelia had found a way to destroy another part of my life. But as the shock wore off, I realized something important. The truth about my father changed nothing about who I was or what I'd accomplished. I'd built my life on my own merit, not on lies about a dead hero. "Thank you," I said, surprising her. "For what?" "For showing me that the only person I can really count on is myself." After Quentin's arrest and Cordelia's betrayal, I made the hardest decision of my life. I drove to Tucson to confront my mother about my father. She was watering her garden when I pulled into the driveway, looking older but still strong despite her recent stroke. "Brandy, what are you doing here?" she asked, setting down the hose. "We need to talk about Dad." Her face went white. "What about your father?" I showed her the documents Cordelia had given me. "He's alive, Mom. He's been in federal prison for 15 years. She sank into a patio chair, tears streaming down her face. "How did you find out?" "Doesn't matter. Why did you lie to me my whole life?" "Because I was ashamed," she whispered. "Your father was involved with some bad people, owed money to loan sharks. He started skimming from his accounting clients to pay them back. When he got caught, I thought it would be easier if you believed he died a hero rather than knowing he was a criminal." I sat down beside her, anger mixing with understanding. "Mom, I had a right to know the truth. You were 10 years old, Brandy. How could I explain that your father chose money over his family?" We talked for hours. She told me about the visits, the letters, how he'd changed in prison and found religion, how he'd beg her to bring me to see him, but she'd refused, thinking it would only hurt me more. "He wants to see you," she said finally. "He's eligible for parole next year. I don't know if I'm ready for that. You don't have to decide today." That night, lying in my childhood bed, I thought about forgiveness and second chances. Quentin and Cordelia had betrayed me out of greed and selfishness. But my mother had lied to protect me, even if her method was wrong. 2 weeks later, I submitted my resignation from Hale and Associates and used my savings to start my own forensic accounting practice. Dale agreed to handle security and investigations. We called it Briggs Forensic Solutions. "You sure about this, brother?" Dale asked as we signed the lease on our first office. Never been more sure of anything in my life. Our first case came from Agent Rodriguez, a suspected insurance fraud that required careful financial analysis. It felt good to use my skills for justice instead of just profit. 3 months later, I met Beatrice at a coffee shop downtown. She was a nurse at Phoenix Children's Hospital, smart and funny, with laugh lines around her eyes and calloused hand from honest work. When I told her I was a forensic accountant, she said, "So you catch bad guys with math? That's actually pretty cool." We talked for 2 hours, and she never once asked how much money I made or what kind of car I drove. She was interested in who I was, not what I could provide. "Would you like to have dinner sometime?" I asked as we were leaving. "I'd like that," she replied with a genuine smile. Walking to my car, I realized I was finally ready to trust again. Not blindly, like before, but carefully, with the wisdom that comes from surviving betrayal. 8 years later, I was standing in that anniversary party, watching Cordelia walk toward me with that hesitant smile. She looked older, tired, but still beautiful. I felt nothing except curiosity about what she might say. "Brandy, wow, it's been forever," she said, her voice softer than I remembered. "Yeah, it has," I replied calmly. "I heard about your business. Briggs Forensic Solutions is doing really well." "We stay busy." She shifted nervously. "I'm married now. Have been for 5 years. My husband's a good man. Nothing like Quentin. I heard he died in prison 2 years ago. Heart attack." Cordelia's face went pale. "You keep track." Agent Rodriguez mentioned it. Said he never admitted to planning my murder, even when they offered him a reduced sentence. "Brandy, I need you to know that I never knew about that part. The murder plan. I thought it was just about the money." I studied her face, looking for signs of deception. I'd gotten good at reading people over the years. "Maybe. Doesn't really matter now. I owe you an apology. I was greedy, selfish. I threw away something real for something that was never going to last." "Apology accepted," I said simply. She looked surprised. "Just like that. Cordelia, carrying anger for 8 years would have poisoned my life, not yours." I chose to let it go. We talked for a few more minutes about safe topics, the weather, mutual friends, surface-level pleasantries. When she asked if we could stay in touch, I politely declined. The next morning, I woke up to a text from an unknown number. Hey, I noticed you left early last night. I was hoping we could talk more. Maybe meet up sometime. I stared at the message, recognizing Cordelia's persistence. Some people never changed. I deleted the text without responding and blocked the number. At breakfast, my wife Beatrice noticed my mood. Everything okay? Just closing an old chapter, I said, taking her hand. How would you feel about renewing our vows for our 5th anniversary? I'd love that. But what brought this on? Sometimes you need to remember what really matters. That afternoon, I drove to the federal facility in Tucson. My father looked older than his 65 years, gray-haired and thin, but his eyes were clear. We'd been meeting monthly for 3 years since his parole. How are things, son? He asked. Good. Busy. The business is expanding into New Mexico. I'm proud of you, Brandy. You built something honest, something that matters. I learned from both your mistakes and Mom's example. He nodded slowly. Fair enough. Any word on grandchildren? I smiled. BEA's pregnant, due in December. His eyes filled with tears. That's wonderful news. Driving home, I thought about second chances and redemption. My father had paid his debt to society and spent years trying to rebuild his relationship with our family. Quentin and Cordelia had chosen destruction over redemption. That evening, Bea and I sat on our porch watching the sunset. She was reading a baby book, her hand resting on her growing belly. Any regrets? She asked out of nowhere. About what? The life you had before. The woman you almost married. I thought about Cordelia's text, her attempt to reopen old wounds. None at all. Everything that happened led me to this moment. To you. To our family. Even the bad parts. Especially the bad parts. They taught me what real love looks like. She smiled and squeezed my hand. What does real love look like? This, I said, gesturing at our simple home, our quiet evening together. Someone who chooses you every day, even when it's not exciting or profitable. As the stars came out, I realized that the boy who'd been betrayed 8 years ago was gone, replaced by a man who understood the difference between love and manipulation, between trust and naivety. The past couldn't hurt me anymore. I'd built something better. They say trust is the foundation of marriage. I trusted my wife for 15 years. I trusted my brother too. That trust almost destroyed me. But they made one fatal mistake. They tried to fool an insurance investigator. I know how to uncover lies, document evidence, and expose fraud. They thought they could betray me and walk away rich. They had no idea what kind of hell I was about to unleash. My name is Garrett Whitman. I'm 45 years old, and until 3 months ago, I thought I had it all figured out. 15 years of marriage, a beautiful daughter Sloan who just turned 18, and a successful insurance business that kept us comfortable in our suburban Phoenix home. I even helped my younger brother Dexter get back on his feet after his divorce, giving him work at my buddy's auto shop and letting him crash in our guest room for months. The night everything fell apart was our 15th wedding anniversary. Celeste had insisted on hosting dinner at home instead of going out, which should have been red flag number 1. She'd invited both our families, my parents, her mother Vivian, even Dexter. It'll be more intimate, she'd said, running her fingers through her newly highlighted hair. I was grilling steaks on a back patio when I heard the laughter from inside. Through the sliding glass door, I could see everyone gathered around the dining table, glasses of wine in hand. Celeste was wearing this red dress I'd never seen before, cut lower than anything she usually wore. She looked good, too good for a family dinner. Dad, the steaks smell amazing, Sloan called out, stepping onto the patio. My daughter had always been my pride and joy, smart as a whip and heading to college in the fall. Just about ready, sweetheart, I said, flipping the last piece of meat. Your mom seems in a good mood tonight. Sloan's expression shifted slightly. Yeah, she's been different lately. More energetic. I should have asked what she meant by that. Instead, I loaded up the platter and headed inside, ready to celebrate another year of what I thought was a solid marriage. The dinner conversation was normal enough. Work stories, Sloan's college plans, my parents asking about our vacation plans. But I noticed things. The way Celeste kept refilling Dexter's wine glass. How she laughed just a little too hard at his jokes. The glances that passed between them when they thought nobody was looking. Then came dessert, and Celeste stood up with her wine glass raised. "I want to make a toast," she announced, her voice carrying a strange confidence I hadn't heard in years. 15 years is a long time to be with one person. I felt my stomach drop, but I forced a smile. Celeste continued, "I've learned a lot about myself lately, about what I really want." She looked directly at me, then shifted her gaze to Dexter. "And I've decided I deserve to be happy." Before I could process what was happening, she leaned down and kissed Dexter. Not a peck on the cheek. A full, passionate kiss that lasted long enough for the entire room to go dead silent. My mother's wine glass shattered on the floor. The silence that followed was deafening. My mother stood frozen, staring at the broken wine glass at her feet. My father's face had turned red, his jaw working like he was chewing nails. Sloane pressed herself against the kitchen doorway, eyes wide with shock. But it was Vivian's reaction that really got to me. Celeste's mother was clapping, actually clapping like she'd just witnessed the best performance of her life. "Good for you, sweetheart," Vivian said, beaming at her daughter. "It's about time you stopped settling." That snapped me out of my shock. Settling. I stood up so fast my chair toppled backward. What the hell is going on here? Celeste straightened up, wiping lipstick from her mouth with the back of her hand. "Garrett, don't make this harder than it needs to be." "Harder than it needs to be," I repeated, my voice rising. "You just kissed my brother at our anniversary dinner." Dexter finally found his voice. "Garrett, man, I can explain." "Explain what, Dex?" I turned on him, 15 years of brotherhood dissolving in an instant. "Explain how you've been screwing my wife while living under my roof." "It's not like that," he stammered, but his face told a different story. "Actually, it is exactly like that," Celeste said coolly. "Dexter and I have been seeing each other for 3 months. And before you start throwing accusations around, maybe you should ask yourself why I went looking elsewhere." My mother spoke up for the first time. "Celeste, how could you do this to our family?" "Your family?" Celeste laughed bitterly. "I've been invisible in this family for years. Garrett works 60 hours a week, comes home exhausted, barely looks at me. When's the last time we went on a real date, Garrett? When's the last time you made me feel wanted?" I stared at her, seeing a stranger where my wife used to be. "So, you decided to sleep with my brother?" "I decided to feel alive again," she shot back. "Something I hadn't felt in years with you." Sloane stepped forward, her voice shaking. "Mom, how could you do this to Dad? To us?" "Oh, sweetheart." Celeste's tone softened as she looked at our daughter. "You'll understand when you're older. Sometimes adults have to make difficult choices." "Difficult choices?" I could barely contain my rage. "You call destroying our family a difficult choice?" My father stood up, his voice like gravel. "Celeste, I think you and your mother should leave. Now." Vivian stood as well, linking arms with her daughter. "Come on, honey. Let's go. You don't need to explain yourself to these people." "These people?" My mother's voice was ice cold. "We're family." "Not anymore," Celeste said, grabbing her purse from the counter. She looked at Dexter. "Are you coming?" My brother sat there for a moment, looking between me and her. For a split second, I thought he might do the right thing. Then he stood up. "Garrett, I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I never meant for it to happen like this." "But you meant for it to happen," I replied. He had no answer for that. They left together, Celeste and Dexter walking out into the night, while Vivian followed behind them like some kind of proud mother hen. The house felt hollow after they were gone. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in my home office, staring at insurance policies and thinking about how people's lives can change in an instant. One minute you're celebrating 15 years of marriage. The next you're planning a divorce. Sloane knocked on my door around midnight. "Dad, can I come in?" "Of course, sweetheart," I said, clearing space on the couch for her. She curled up next to me, something she hadn't done since she was little. "I can't believe Mom did that. And Uncle Dexter." "I know, baby. I can't believe it either." "Are you going to be okay?" she asked, her voice small. I put my arm around her. "We're going to be fine. Both of us." "What happens now?" I looked at my daughter, my smart, brave daughter who didn't deserve any of this. Now I make sure we come out of this stronger than before. The next morning, I called my lawyer, Steve Morrison. We'd known each other since high school, and I trusted him with my life. "Garrett, what can I do for you?" Steve asked when he picked up. "I need a divorce attorney. The best one you know." There was a pause. "What happened?" I told him everything. When I finished, Steve let out a low whistle. "Your own brother? That's cold, man." But here's the thing. Arizona is a no-fault state. The affair won't matter much for the divorce itself. What about our assets? That's different, especially if we can prove she was spending marital funds on this affair. Do you have access to bank statements? I thought about Celeste's recent shopping sprees, the mysterious charges on her credit cards. I'll get them. Good. Also, document everything from here on out. Every conversation, every text message. And Garrett, don't do anything stupid. Don't give her ammunition. After I hung up, I got to work. Being in the insurance business had taught me one thing. Documentation is everything. I started with our joint